Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today I have a really interesting topic that is very relevant to the world that we currently live in. That is spiritual psychosis. And you may or may not have heard of this term before, spiritual psychosis. But we're going to dig into this. What is spiritual psychosis? What are the effects of spiritual psychosis? How is this an issue? What are some solutions? And most of all, I just want to really start a discussion. What do you think about spiritual psychosis? Have you had anyone in your own life who displayed symptoms of spiritual psychosis? And if so, what can be done for them? So I'm looking forward to this video. My name's Derrick Ivey. I'm a board certified clinical hypnotherapist, researcher, and intuitive and hypnotherapy instructor. So I've been on the path of spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it since 2012. And that got me onto this path. And since I've been on this path, I have helped a lot of people integrate experiences after going through spiritual psychosis. So, not all hope is lost if you or someone you know is experiencing spiritual psychosis, but information and knowledge is power because then we know what's going on. We have a little bit better of an idea of what's going on, and then we can find solutions. So, what is spiritual psychosis? Spiritual psychosis is an altered state of perception, and an altered state of perception is not always something bad. Hypnosis is an altered state of perception. But spiritual psychosis is an altered state of perception that is characterized by very disorganized, very grandiose, very life disrupting type of patterns that are rooted in a spiritual nature. So if someone's experiencing an episode of spiritual psychosis, most likely they're going to have a lot of expressions and consequences of that in their outward expression of how they appear to the world. They might be saying things that really don't make a whole lot of sense, even to people that are in the spiritual realm. It's almost like they have, in their mind, cracked the code of spiritual enlightenment. So it's like often these really inflated ideas of who they are and who they are in the world, what the world is. Um, and then spiritual psychosis can also include huge amounts of fear. And a good recent example of spiritual psychosis is if you can think back to April 8th of this year, we had the eclipse, and during the eclipse there was many people, even people putting things out online on TikTok, on YouTube, just completely hysterical. The world is ending. This is the end. That's spiritual psychosis, right? Because it's this very inflated idea of what is going on, how you relate to what's going on. Um, but that idea is very far altered from reality and from perception. So spiritual psychosis really is this cluster of conditions and viewpoints and consequences that happen as a result of all of that, that usually carry a spiritual theme. So they're usually rooted in some sort of spiritual belief system, whether that's a religion, a new age concept, or just that that person's own perception of spirituality and how they relate to that. But that's a really good example, especially because that recently happened even this month of spiritual psychosis, is that um, eclipse and the people that were terrified that this is the end of the world. And so obviously that didn't happen. But some other examples of spiritual psychosis would be, you know, someone thinking that they are Jesus or that they are Buddha or that they are Mother Mary and that they are responsible for something that happened all the way across the world. And although that we do live in a very interconnected environment where everything is related to everything and what have you, it's like there's a difference between having that broader view and literally taking that personally, that you were responsible for a volcano going off across the world. So that's actually one of the ways that we can really say that things are pointing to a place of spiritual psychosis is when we look at the consequences and the outcomes that is happening in someone's life. And that's always going to be the gauge of whether or not this is damaging for the person, of whether it needs further integration and further help from mental health professionals and psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors, right? But also, there's this need to integrate the spiritual experience that this person had, because I don't want to invalidate any experience that anyone has had or is having, because there is validity to your experience. That is your experience, even if it is classified as spiritual psychosis. It's still a very real experience to the person who is experiencing it. So, really, when we're looking into this, think about what is the impact that these ideas and these belief systems are having in this person's life. And if it's a negative outcome, negative effect, negative consequences, then there's more to look into. There's more that needs to be integrated so that person can live in a healthy way for them. And I also want to talk about the emergence and the danger of taking messages as coming directly from God. And especially in a time in our planet where there's so many people that are claiming to be authorities in this or that. And, they're starting all of these things. There's all these gurus out there. And so it's really a lot of people are giving their power away to these gurus, to these leaders, and not really thinking for themselves. But I think that's extremely dangerous. And I do a lot of soul journey work with people in hypnotherapy, and a lot of messages come through the spirit realm into their experience through these sessions. But it's always very important to realize that these are not necessarily messages coming directly from God, directly from source, directly from your spirit guides and all of this. They're all aspects of you. They're all guidance for you, yes, but we also have to take that with a grain of salt and look at how that actually integrates into experience. Is this in the highest good of you in the long term and the short term? Is this in the highest good and interest of everyone else on our planet? Because we all share this planet, so we need to make sure that even when we're receiving these spiritual messages, that we're being safe, we are being realistic, and we're looking at this all through an integrated viewpoint and not just taking this as the absolute truth. And that's something that in my quantum shift hypnosis practitioner program, where we train quantum hypnosis practitioners in for the next generation of healers, that's something that we get very, very clear on in the training, is really how to take these messages in, but then how to integrate them in a way that is not going to be harmful for you or anyone else. And it's these kinds of things that come up in our journey work with clients that oftentimes people may get that skewed, and they might hear something and immediately they take that as gospel. They take that as the absolute truth. And that's not necessarily safe. That's not an integrated worldview. And same goes for people listening to these thought leaders or gurus and just writing off everything else and seeing that one person's viewpoint as absolute truth. And we'll get into why that is later in this video and everything, but just something to be aware of. This is how cults get started. You think about that cult that burned down in Texas years ago. That was a direct message from God, from that leader of that cult, and it killed all these people. It was horrible devastation that happened. So this can really, really affect you if you don't have that more grounded and integrated view of the messages that are coming through during your spiritual sessions. Back in the 1990s, they did a study, a bunch of researchers and doctors, and it's not a huge study by any means. I believe there was like 193 participants or something like that. But all of these participants were experiencing psychosis and were under psychiatric care. And they found that, see, 24% of these patients who were experiencing psychosis had a religious theme to that psychosis. So it's actually really, really hard to pinpoint the exact prevalence of spiritual psychosis because of this, because even of those people that are experiencing psychosis or spiritual psychosis, what have you, they are really, it's the doctor and their training and their background and their life experience is going to play into whether or not they're even able to recognize that this is going on. It's going to play into whether they're just going to diagnose this as a health issue, as like a severe mental health issue or a drug use issue, and really there's more to it and there's more going on. So that's why it's so hard to really know, is because there's such a wide variety of different ways that doctors diagnose things. And that's if they even get to a doctor and even seek mental health care, because a lot of times they don't even make it into that, right? So it's hard to say precisely. And it is not so cut and dry. Um, so all of this also exists on a spectrum. On one side, we have pure logic, pure psychological. On the other side, we have pure spiritual and pure kind of intuition, right? So all of this exists somewhere along that spectrum. And I believe that's a barrier to well being for a lot of people because they are being put in a box one way or another, and they're not actually getting the care that they need to help them integrate. Maybe their experiences are even being invalidated on this side because they had a spiritual experience on this side, but that was still a very real experience to them. So it's going to take a mixture of help from both of those sides to really integrate and help someone feel really, really grounded. So that's it's especially confusing to people that are feeling that transcendent experience. So it's like they know what they experienced, and whether it's real or not to you or I, it's very real to the person who's experiencing that. So they might be having this transcendent experience where they're transcending above these different layers of their consciousness, but then they're being called completely crazy, or it's suspected that this is because of a certain drug use or whatever. So it's really helpful for someone experiencing this because basically their entirety of their spiritual experience hasn't been validated. In fact, their entire spiritual experience oftentimes gets completely invalidated in a spiritual or in a Western medicine or Western psychology setting. So it's truly helpful for someone who's experiencing spiritual psychosis is to have support on both ends of the spectrum, as I said. That's going to be really, really ideal. They need the grounding and analysis, maybe, of the doctors and the psychiatrists and the mental health professionals. So I don't want to discount that because this is very important, but perhaps they also need that support from a transpersonal alternative therapy practitioner, someone like me, or a Reiki healer, or a hypnotherapist, someone who has deep understanding of this realm and can help them really take everything apart and integrate that experience in the safest and most beneficial way for them. And someone who can validate that spiritual experience as well as help them to honor the wisdom that might have come out of that, because it's not all good or all bad, right? there are certain pieces of wisdom that could come through that spiritual experience. So maybe that wisdom would help them overcome their mental health condition. So we want to help them do that and integrate it and just really feel okay about everything in their experience so they can move forward in a productive way and be a productive member of society, get along in their communities, as well as honoring their spiritual beliefs and their spiritual path and journey. So we need to think of safety as the number one concern, as always, even in my hypnotherapy work, in my energy healing work, safety is always my number one concern for the client is this person safe? Are they experiencing feeling safe and having this experience and sharing this experience in a judgment-free zone? How can we ground this person into safety and help them to integrate their experience? Because these experiences might be something that is very, very difficult, right? Like trauma may have pushed them into this state of spiritual psychosis. They might have had a very traumatic loss. They may have had a death in the family. They might have just had a brutal breakup or divorce, or maybe they witnessed something that was very, very traumatizing. So they really need support in that as well as love. So the key to ask ourselves is what is the potential outcome of these experiences or ideas that are coming forth? So we look at that person through the lens of love and we ask, is this person, is what they're thinking or doing dangerous or going to be detrimental to them or someone else in some way? Are they safe? Are the people around them safe? That's going to be a good indicator of whether or not any intervention at all is needed. But you always do need to consult with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a licensed mental health professional about this, right? So, in my practice with hypnotherapy and energy healing, I don't diagnose, treat, or cure any conditions, including spiritual psychosis. I can absolutely be a support for someone experiencing this, and it's a beneficial level of support, but I work in tandem with their doctors, with their care team. And there may be times when someone comes to me with an issue like this, and we don't even start our work. I tell them, yeah, you need to go and get an evaluation from a licensed mental health professional and get the clearance and get the okay that it's okay for you to be working with me on these spiritual things. So, first things first, they need to be safe. They need to see a mental health professional. It comes through either an emergence over time, usually the spiritual psychosis, or a spiritual emergency could jolt someone into the state of spiritual psychosis. So the difference between emergence and emergency. So an emergence is something that, they're going to pick up an idea here and an idea there. And over time, it's going to shift this person's perspective of life, of themselves, maybe in this way. But an emergency situation is, let's say, yeah, they had that really traumatizing event and it literally changed the entire way they saw the world. And that's a very intense experience for that person. Either way, to be in spiritual psychosis, that's such an intense experience. So, really have love and compassion for yourself if you're experiencing it, or for other people that are experiencing it, because it is hard. It takes courage to get help. It takes what it takes for them to heal, and we don't want to be another source of pain for this person who has already been through so much. A lot of spiritual psychosis can also be a really twisted and misguided coping mechanism. Um, so, as the case most of the time, integration is what's needed. It might be a coping mechanism because that experience that the person had was so painful that it's too much for them to handle. It's too much for them to conceptualize. So, this is the only way they can make sense of their experience, right? And also, just this goes without saying, but I do want to say this. If you or someone you know is experiencing spiritual psychosis, a mental health emergency, or physical health emergency, then turn this video off and dial 911. So we have to help the individual make sense of their experience in a way that honors the spiritual wisdom that's available to that person, while at the same time helps them view it in such a way that they're grounded in reality and they're functional in the world. And at the end of the day, I want to encourage everyone to build a deeper awareness of their own intuition and what that feels like in your body. What does a full body yes feel like? What does a full body no feel like? So, if you hear a spiritual idea, I encourage you not to take that as truth right off the bat. Feel what you feel in your body. Does that feel true to me? Even things that I say, don't take it as instant truth. Feel it through your body. Does this feel like truth? Um, to me, right? Because we all have such different life experiences and such different factors that contribute to how we experience life, that I can't tell you what's right for you, and you can't tell me what's right for me, because we haven't stepped in each other's shoes and we don't know how where each other is actually coming from on a complete level. Maybe partially we have an idea of that, but now more than ever at this time on our planet, when you see someone talking, on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, really notice how your body responds to that person and to the words that they're saying. Your body will always tell you if it's truth or if it is not resonating, right? And a lot of these spiritual psychosis cases begin from people not following their intuition, from listening to what all of these other people are telling them to do, telling them to feel, and then they lose touch with reality, with themselves, and then that it just keeps spiraling. So let's start now by really honoring what our body feels. And Dr. David Hawkins, he did muscle testing at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And he did extensive studies, and the body will test strong, the arm outstretched. And if something is truth and resonates with that person, you could not push that arm down with a piece of machinery, right? But if it's not resonating as truth, their arm goes weak. So you can always look that up too, muscle testing. That's a really good way to get in touch with your intuition, um, with your body. Practicing energy healing is a good way also because you can tap into your sacral response, usually, which is below the navel, and really just feel, okay, is this resonating as truth? Okay, not so much. So I'm going to walk away from this. And recently, I've walked away from so many places and people and things in life that just were not resonating with me because my body told me, like, something's not right here. And I've learned more and more to really, really trust that first initial intuition, because how many times in life have you went through something really, really painful, and then you're like, I knew it, I knew that that wasn't right for me, but you overrode that intuition to make someone else happy, or because you doubted yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Feel what you need to feel around that. And always remember also that someone who is a true leader is always going to honor what you feel, and they're never going to tell you how to feel. They're never going to tell you how to think, how to act. They are going to want the best for you, and they're going to want you to honor your own intuition. So if you or someone you know is struggling with spiritual psychosis, with any issue that we talked about here today, as I tell everyone, use all of your resources that are available to you. And you might even be surprised to know that you have so much more resources in the world than maybe you even are aware of. But use all of your resources that are at your disposal to help you heal, and reach out, make an appointment with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a licensed mental health professional first and foremost. If you are experiencing this spiritual psychosis, first and foremost, that's the most important part first. But also, I encourage you to also get supplemental transpersonal support. And transpersonal is beyond the body mind. So the spiritual aspect and the holistic aspect that takes into account you as a whole person and your entire experience. That's what I'm here for as a transpersonal hypnotherapist, Reiki healer, NLP practitioner, researcher, and instructor. Is I'm here to help you integrate all of that. But I'm never going to suggest that you don't seek help from a mental health professional first and foremost. But I can really help you to integrate what you're hearing from here, what you're hearing from here, and everything in between, and really help you tap into your own intuition and your own body of what really feels right for you and help you make those choices and support you along the way and really hold you to manifesting that highest version of yourself. And it all comes from love. So I hope this video was helpful for you today. And I'm just sending you a huge hug, no matter what's happening in your life right now. And lots of blessings. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us to get these videos out to more souls to spread awareness on all of the wonderful things that we talk about in our beautiful corner of the internet. And also comment. I want to hear, what do you think about this? Have you ever had an experience of spiritual psychosis? Maybe a family member, a coworker, but you're loved. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.